but to control it. For the crows, memory was a currency and silence was profit. They did not shout. They did not boast. They did not threaten. They simply smiled longer than comfortable and listened more closely than polite. Their horror was not thunderous, it was patient. The farm itself seemed built on patience. Long rows of corn no one saw harvested, outbuildings whose doors stayed closed, a well that sounded deeper than the earth should allow. Night on that land was different. It was thicker. Sounds traveled strangely, as if woods swallowed them, chewed, and spit them back out changed. A single owl could sound like three. A single footstep could become many. Neighbors, few though they were, told themselves explanations so that sleep might visit them. Maybe wolves had come back. Maybe people simply fled west without farewell. Maybe the river took them. The mind reaches for comfort the way a drowning man reaches for shore. But then came winter of 1798, the winter that locals later called the season of knocking. Doors knocked in the middle of the night, not with fists, but gently, with the patience of someone certain they would be answered. When doors were opened, there was no one. Sometimes, instead, there was a faint smell. People struggled to describe iron, earth, rain trapped in cloth as if the night itself were carrying news it did not want to give. And far across the ridges, over frozen fields, a thin line of light rode above Briar Hollow, like a seam torn in darkness. Whatever was happening there no longer stayed politely hidden. In the spring, a circuit preacher, Jonathan Hale, took it upon himself to visit the crows, believing as some men do that prayer can bully any shadow into honesty. His journal survived. His owner did not. The last entry ends mid-sentence. They welcomed me gladly, too gladly, and the children's eyes were the ink trails. A line wobbled by a shaking hand, then nothing but a pressed-in thumbprint. As if the writer tried to hold the page itself. The preacher never delivered another sermon. After that, fear thickened into action. A group of farmers and trappers, good men and flawed men like all frontier folk, gathered not to accuse but to look. They told their wives they were simply going to check on neighbors after a hard winter. But they carried rifles. They crossed the ridges. And they walked down the road the way men walk toward storms they can no longer ignore. What they found did not scream, it whispered. The crow house stood as always, straight and expectant, smoke rising from its chimney in a calm, domestic way that seemed almost mocking once they noticed the silence beneath it. No chickens. No livestock sounds. No children's voices. Just the wind sliding across boards and the slow pulse of the chimney. The door was not locked. It opened as if it had been waiting. Inside, the kitchen table was set for more people than lived in that house. Plates stood, dusted lightly, as if time itself had paused mid-meal. In one cup, tea leaves had formed strange shapes, like maps of countries no one wanted to visit. Caleb Crow's chair was pulled back slightly, as if he had risen only a moment ago. Upstairs, beds were made perfectly, too perfectly, with corners so tight they looked unused. The house was not abandoned, it was paused, and that frightened the men more than any signs of struggle would have. In the cellar, always the cellar, the air changed. It became colder, heavier, touched with that same hard-to-name scent that neighbors had learned to dread. What the men saw has a dozen versions, none identical, all circling the same center, objects belonging to people who never came home, neatly stacked, labeled, preserved as if the crows had attempted to archive the very notion of disappearance. A ribbon, a ring, a traveling hat, a small carved toy with no child to claim it. No one spoke for a long time. Even the bravest men in the group later said they felt watched by the walls, as if the house resented being witnessed. The Crow family themselves were simply gone. No bodies, no signs of flight, no tracks leading away. As if the land swallowed them the way the house had swallowed sound. Some believed they fled west ahead of what was coming, convinced the frontier would forgive them, as it forgives almost anything. Others believed the opposite, that Briar Hollow claimed what it had shaped, that whatever darkness they had fed had finally decided it no longer needed hosts. The truth, like much of history, refused to sit still. The farm decayed over decades, its fences collapsing like ribs, its roof sinking until the house looked as though it bowed under the weight of its own secrets. Travelers still avoided the road long after the crows became story rather than memory. Children dared each other to run to the edge of the property line and back, never crossing, never stepping onto soil that seemed, even then, faintly warm as if it remembered footsteps too well. And on certain nights,